Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today we're diving into a conversation that challenges the conventional norms around health, aging, and living life on your own terms. Joining me is Gregory Anne Cox, though to most she's known as Greg. For over 22 years, Greg has been coaching women in both the health and wellness space and in business. Greg believes that there's no one way to be healthy and that it's an act of rebellion to stand up for your health decisions, your style, and your way of doing the second half of life. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Pleasure to be here.
So before we get into the intended area of focus, I thought it might be fun to share with the audience the story of your name origin.
Well, thanks for asking. I love the story. So my grandmother on my mother's side, her maiden name is Gregory. And I don't know what they were thinking, but either way, it was going to be Gregory as a first name, I guess. My dad died right before I was born, so I can't corroborate my mother's story. And then my father's mother's name, first name is Anne. So they decided instead of Anne Gregory, they would do Gregory Anne to be creative. And I was born on St. Gregory's Day, which to the Irish Catholic family made all the difference.
Well, that's a lot of reasons, but I got to tell you, it wasn't lost on me that they chose a non-traditional girl's name, which some might think of as a little bit rebellious.
Yeah, there you go.
And you've built your whole brand on the rebellious approach to health.
You know, I never thought it that way, Marianne.
Well, there you go. Now you can kind of think about that.
I will.
But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting because it was a little bit rebellious of them. So kick us off. Share with us, why do you choose to focus on taking a rebellious approach to health, to life, all of it? What's that mean to you?
My mother would tell you that I came in this way. I was raised in a way, all girls school. We were polite. We wore little white gloves. We curtsied. This is how far back we're going, Catholic school. And so I was able to follow protocols. But given my own, way, I would go out in my cute little pinafore dress and get dirty and play in the dirt. Or I would get on a bike when I was told not to get on a bike and fall off and come crying in the room. My mother would be like, well, I told you so. And I was like, okay, you're right. So I had this she gave me a lot of flexibility. And I also wanted to be a doctor. I remember doctoring my baby dolls, doctoring my stuffed animals. And it wasn't meant to be for me once I got through school and teachers were like, you're really good with words. Science is not really your strong point. Okay, great. But then I wanted to find a way that I could still participate in a sort of healing, helping. So after I started studying psychology in college, and then I left college because my mom got sick, and I ended up going to Culinary Institute of America and becoming a chef. So that's science, they said I wasn't good at science, but I'm good at that kind of science. But then I still was studying natural health, alternative ways of being healthy. My mom got pancreatic cancer. I was convinced I was going to be able to help her with like vitamins and whatever. Of course, that wasn't not meant to be. Nowadays, I understand that those things can be a support system for people going through treatment. But anyway, that just fired me up more. Like, okay, well, that didn't work, but what else can I do? So I finally got certified as a coach, studied nutrition and all that stuff. So I combined them. And when I was going through perimenopause, I just started writing about it. The internet, there was a lot more room to write and get noticed. So it was very easy for me to get followers and people would engage and say, well, what do you mean you're taking this? And are you taking hormones? And so that's where it started. And I just have always had that desire to help and to be in conversation with people about what's going on in their lives. So it's kind of like going back to psychology without going back and getting the degree. But that's where it all started. I just came in this way.
I find it so interesting to hear people's stories of how they get here because I have yet to find a person that says, I knew from day one and I followed this path.
Hmm.
We all have these crazy windy paths that take us to all these other places and then right back to where we belonged in the first place, right? It's
Hmm.
just such a wild ride.
Yeah, I agree.
So I've heard you say that you think, and I'm paraphrasing, so you can correct me with your own words, but that you feel like most of us will at some point wish we'd done more when we were younger to listen to our bodies, to deal with the people, to deal with the relationships, the habits, all those things. Is that belief what still drives you to try to get the message out? And do you still believe that?
That's an interesting question. I would have to say that I'm less about shoulds these days than when I wrote that. I believe that there is always a time, we can create the time to take on something that is not serving us in our lives.
Mm.
And I do think that as we age and our bodies change, our emotional perspective changes. If things are really bugging us, especially with our health, like if we have been couch potato and all of a sudden we're getting really stiff joints and we're having a hard time moving and that's leading to a heart disease, we may look back and say, God, if only I had taken that aerobics class 3 times a week. But I don't like to be in that space either, to look back, right? About what can we do right now?
Yeah.
And right now is the perfect time. And especially with relationships, when relationships are challenging in a not a good way, because some relationships that are not easy can still have joy and, make us think and this and that. But if somebody's really sucking the life out of you, I think you have to do whatever you can to find a way to free yourself from that relationship or have a conversation and see where it goes about what would work for you. Because our emotional lives are just as important as any other health aspect of us. So, yeah, I'm going to get away from the shoulds, but I'm going to say, if it comes back to your mind now and again, like, I wonder if this would be a good thing for me. Should I walk 3 times a week? Should I pick up the weights? It's probably your inner wisdom saying, give it a try.
Yeah, I think you hit on a couple things that I completely agree with. I think we could all look back and we could all say, I wish I did, or I could have done better, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are in your stage, there are things. But we can't go back.
Yeah.
So what's the point, right? So what can you do today to do a better job than you did yesterday, or even one decision ago? What could you do in the next decision that changes that or shifts it in the better direction?
Yeah, I like that.
And as far as relationships, don't you feel like, especially, I know, you focus on the second half, you call it the second half. Peace is a big thing in the second half, having peace and guarding your peace and finding things that are more in line with what really lights you up, what really fills you up. And that is definitely where relationships and those relationships that draw on you more than they give into you, I think it really plays in there. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and especially in the times we are living in, that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Peace is at a premium.
Yes.
If you engage at all, and it's hard not to. So guarding, you made the good point of guarding our peace, whatever it takes for us to find peace, even if it's 5 minutes a day because we had an extraordinarily busy day, especially before we go to sleep. If there's a way that you, the listener, have learned to calm your mind, I know that that's not easy either, but sleep is such a critical piece of healthy aging and keeping our emotions in check. They say when emotion goes up, intelligence goes down. So if we're tired, we're more apt to be reactive, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, peace is critical.
Definitely. So I want to go back to the question about the rebellious approach. What does that look like? So if you're working with somebody or even in your own journey, because I know you've had quite a bit of transformation in your own life, what does that look like? What does that mean?
It means, for one, ignoring all the influencers on whatever social. We can't escape them. That's fine. Follow them, enjoy whatever their outfits or their, cool drink that they're drinking, their face. I get so many things I must have followed or downloaded one thing about anti-aging cream. And now Instagram is like anti-aging cream, anti-aging hair stuff. And I'm like, all right, okay, I got the message. I'm old. I need all these products, but I'm going to ignore them. Especially when it comes to, let's just say there are certain people that value strength and working out and push, push, push. until whatever age. That's great. And there will come a time, I can almost guarantee everybody listening, there will come a time when push, bench pressing 200 pounds, even if you could do it, does not serve you anymore. It doesn't feel good. And yet when we're on Instagram and we see it, it's like so tempting, like, oh, I want to just try that one more time. Or somebody's run 3 marathons this year. Great. I just think that it's pressure that we don't need. The other rebellious piece is not necessarily dialing into the Western medical model. If they say, you go for your checkup once a year, they don't do a whole lot of tests. They might give you a basic blood workup. They'll look at your cholesterol. They'll probably say it's high. They'll look at your blood pressure. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Your blood sugar, at least at the very least, they should be looking at that. That's a number I really do think is important. But then if they start prescribing things and you're not a medication type of person, I was with a friend of mine, I went just to be that extra set of ears to a cardiologist. And the cardiologist said, well, we're going to put you on this and you'll be on it for the rest of your life. She's like 58 years old. And she said, the rest of my life could be 40 years. He said, well, maybe things will change in that time. And it was just this ridiculous conversation. There was no alternative. Let's try something else if you don't want to go that route. And so she said no, and we left. That's a rebellious act, Now, if you have extremely high blood pressure and or other issues that would be helped keep you alive and without a stroke and without a heart attack, then I would say take the medication with the support of lifestyle change, because 80 to 90% of everything that ails us starts with our habits. But I don't want anybody to think, well, my blood pressure is 180 over 95. I'm just going to skip the blood med. Yeah, you need to take your BPs until you get some other kind of support.
I think the conversation is changing in a way that some of these things that you're talking about, I do think it's shifting. I do think if we looked back 20 years ago, people weren't really looking into mainstream people weren't really looking into holistic medicine, etc.
Right.
I do think the conversation's changing now in a way that at least people are exploring both Western and Eastern modalities to see
Yes.
what can help. I've known a few people that have gone through cancer and they've worked it from both angles and had really great results. And could one have worked versus the other? Who knows? Doesn't matter. But they were able to find comfort and wellness ultimately in being able to explore both. So I think one of the things that's really important is for people to find, especially in the Western medical arena, find doctors that are open to it, find doctors that aren't closed off and that think that pill is the only way, right? Because I think they were taught that way. They were taught to treat and not look for root cause as much. After talking to a lot of medical professionals, I think their system's broken too, and that they don't get compensated. They don't get time to really get into the root cause stuff. So I think it's so important for us to look at both sides of the medical or the health and wellness space when we're trying to look for something that can help us. So I agree with you.
And that's the main platform of my work and my podcast, is to bring in experts from both sides, alternative and Western. But the Western people have to have an alternative way of thinking about things, right?
Yeah.
I've had heart surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, all kinds of docs, but they were the ones that said, the system is broken, like you said, and here's how we're going to fix it. And not every doctor has the flexibility to go outside a network, start something on their own. It's very expensive. The insurance is crazy, right? So I'm not batting on any doctors. I'm simply saying that, and you said, try to find a doctor who will listen, who's open. The other thing that is a rebellious act is to say what you need for your self-care if it impinges on some other people around you's lives, that you used to be there for them and now you're like, I need that 4 to 5 slot back every day because that's when I'm going to do yoga, or that's when I'm going to walk, or I'm just going to sit and paint. I'm going to sit and do nothing, right?
So important. So hard.
It's hard. And especially when you have adult children who have children. I know my kids and grandchildren live in the UK, so I don't get this constant, like, can you take care of them?
Yeah.
But I've heard from a lot of people that do. It's an act of rebellion to say, I need some time for me, or to a friend, no, I really don't want to meet you for margaritas this Friday, but we always go, I just don't feel like it. I'm going to stay home. take something, but it's important.
It's so important to point out that that struggle is real. And as someone who has grandchildren, I mentioned to you, I have 3 grandchildren, and I am so lucky that they're all very, very close. I definitely had to put boundaries. So we were all knew the rules of engagement. And I still find myself sometimes like, oh, I don't have anything going on tonight. I probably should go see the kid, like feel like I should. And then I have the shoulds again. And then
Yeah.
will talk to myself and say, no, you need a minute to yourself. The downtime is good. Like just take it.
Hmm.
But it is a struggle. It is a struggle. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. And it's hard to say no. If, like you said, if they, need something and you already had plans, it's hard to say no. You feel bad.
Yeah.
But you do have to take care of yourself. I mean, if you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be there to help them at all. So
Exactly.
so important. Great, great point. I'm really curious about, again, you've done some transformation yourself. You've helped lots of women at this point. What do you think holds us back the most when we're trying to make big change?
I think we don't believe it'll work for us. We are our own worst enemy when it comes to taking on something. I mean, the statistics, everybody goes to the gym in January. By February 24th or whatever it is, nobody's going to the gym anymore. And so our brain, it's like the other grooves that the habits create the grooves in our brain, the synapses. So when we undertake something new, whether it's personal development, like an emotional thing, a physical thing, changing our jobs or moving, making new friends, all of those things, the loop starts playing. I've tried this before. It's not going to work. I never stick with anything. Well, it worked for my other girlfriend, but look she's already skinny to begin with, or she already had different credentials than I did. So why would I get a job? I'm 60 years old. I'll never, right? So I think the hardest thing for people, and this is why coaching is so great, is a coach will remind you of what you just said. Like, so we don't even hear ourselves.
Yes.
And so I think that really is what trips us up more than anything.
So conversely, when you see people have a lot of success that you're working with, is there a pattern there? Is there something that you see in common across those success stories that really stands out?
I would say the commonality is people change their language. Who's this? James, the Atomic Habits?
Clear.
Yes. He says, rather than, like all of a sudden you're going to read a book every night before you go to bed, whatever, a personal development book. And he said, rather than say, I'm going to read this book, I'm the kind of person who really enjoys personal development or enjoys reading or enjoys running or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you start to train your brain to think of who you are is different than who you were a minute ago. Like you said, you can make a decision now and then you can make another one in another minute, right?
Yeah.
So I think it really is that people start to believe in possibility for themselves. And they also, I'm not a big vision like 1 year, 10 years, 5 years. I don't go there. It's too far for me personally. So therefore, I'm not going to coach people that way. But I think that having some kind of idea of what you want to feel like, you may not have a picture, but what will feel different than you are in this moment? Because everything we do is based on emotion.
Yep.
We can say it's because we're logical people. We can say it's because we had a plan and we followed the plan, but it is an emotionally driven plan because we want to feel a certain thing.
That is true. I do think there's something to be said about being able to envision that person, that version of yourself, what it looks like, what she feels like, who she hangs out with, what she eats, those kinds of things. Because tying back to what you said about James Clear, I do think that then helps you talk about yourself and see yourself as that person already when you have a clear vision of what that is. So I think it's the feeling and being able to kind of really know who it is you want to be. So I think it's helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know what you mean when you say food is everything. Everything is food. What does that mean?
Well, if you were to review conversations you've had in the past week, it's almost sure that you have or somebody has used food as a metaphor, like, oh, my little lamb, or things like that. So we're already attuned to thinking of food in other ways. My honey bun, right? And that person is like a bad leg of chicken, right? So it came to me one day that really everything that comes into our energy field, because we're all energy, right? Or into our body through our mouths, our ears, our awareness, is food in the way that it triggers a chemical cascade, which produces hormones and neurotransmitters and creates a feeling, which is the emotion. And then we start talking about it, right? The reason why this, that, and the other. So think about all of the noise that's around us every day. Instagram, we talked about, maybe the news, maybe you live in a noisy environment. All of those things are creating something inside of you, unless you know how to filter them.
Yes.
Now, people get used to, for some reason, there was an airplane over our head today that was very low. They train pilots at night because they don't want these young people that don't, or it's anybody who's not a good flyer in the air, I guess, when there's other, but it came really close to the house and it was probably 4 a.m. And I thought people that live in a flight path live maybe not that close to the house, and I was worried. I'm like, is he falling on our house? Anyway, but people tune it out. So that's what I'm saying. If you have things in your life that are stressful for other people, but you've just learned to modify that reaction, that's not such bad food.
Yeah.
But if you are having, we talked about emotional relationships that are not great, that's feeding you, because you then start the whole cycle. The why we can't go to sleep at night when the brain is going, it's often replaying things that have happened. So you eat an apple, you get a reaction in your body. You eat cheese doodles, you get a reaction. You listen to the news, you get it. So that's why I say everything is food. It's either feeding us well or feeding us ill.
Yes.
So we have to be careful about what we allow in.
100%. And back to that social media, I think we all are getting a little too much, it's one of these things where it's great and it's also not so good. So I just feel like you have to be really in tune with how much it's affecting you. I know recently I did a challenge with my community around trying to minimize how often we're turning to it, how often we're picking up our phone, because I think it can quickly turn into something you're doing without even really thinking about it. So taking a step back and really tuning into that, I think it's really important. But I agree with you. I do think it's all, it's either feeding or taking away from you. So everything. So it's important to know the difference. I'm curious about what advice you wish you knew 30 years ago.
Oh dear. I always skip these questions on questionnaire. What would you tell your younger self? I'm like, I don't know. I suppose I would tell my younger self to just go for it and be who you are, right? Because 30 years ago in my 30s, there's so much competing. Even I'm not a competitive person, but it's also why I don't play team sports, because maybe I am and I don't want to see that side of me. But I would say, don't worry about it so much. Don't worry about when I got done with restaurants, I went to become a private chef. And when you're in people's homes, it's a very intimate setting, even if it seems casual. It's like dinner with the kids. It doesn't matter. You're in their home for many hours. Sometimes you're there first thing in the morning. People are wandering around in their pajamas. And it's easy to take something out of context in that situation. Like, oh, you didn't get the bagels? We have croissants today. And then I would beat myself up. Like, God, I should have remembered the bagels instead of the croissants. It's just a mini example of the kind of things that can trip you up when you're younger. I'm saying at some point, because looking back, I love that I didn't have a clear path like other people. They were going to go to this school, that school, grad school, get the corporate job, whatever. That's great for the people that it suits. It was never going to suit me. And I'm happy with that because it has brought me to where I am, and I'm happy with who I am.
I love that. I love that you're happy with who you are. I mean, which it kind of makes me think about the fact that so you're somebody you're aging out loud, you're doing it in your own way, you're very comfortable in your own skin. And one of the patterns that I see and people are talking about more and more is how different it is to age now, especially as women, than it was, 20, 30 years ago. I mean, you said your friend that went to the doctors and was saying at 50, they had another 40 years or so. I think, right? That was what you said. That wouldn't have been the case. Nobody would have thought that 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I think it's this dichotomy of really cool that we know we have this whole second half, to your point of saying second half, that can be equally as long as the first half. And well, that's why we say half, duh. But I mean, there's a lot of time left to do all the cool things we want to do. And there's a lot of modeling now for these younger women coming up that can see these really vibrant women
Hmm.
beyond 50 doing lots of cool things. I
Yeah.
mean, do you see that too? Is it different than what you saw when you were a teenager, as an example?
Oh, heavens. Yeah. I mean, if I was thinking about when I was a teenager, even, my mom went to work and she had a certain way of dressing, and there was, certain hours, and there was a very, very strong male presence in the jobs that she had, until she started her own business. And I don't think there was ever a thought that anybody would live to 80 or 90 healthfully. Now, I had relatives who didn't die until they were in their 80s. They were much older than I. So there was always longevity. But I don't think we counted on having longevity like we do now. We crave the idea. Like, I want to get to 85 and 90. My aunt is 93 in a couple of weeks. She lives alone down in Mexico. She's great. And that's that's I don't want to live in Mexico. I don't want her lifestyle. But the fact, I mean, she reads, we compare notes on politics and books and all this stuff. That's what I look towards
Yeah.
and say, that's how I want to be. So she
Vibrant.
doesn't get around the way she used to. She still drives, she has a pet, she has lizards, just a simple, sweet life. And that's what I would hope for anybody who wants that. Some people don't want to live a really long time. I get that too.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of seeing people at 90 now being able to do all the things. And yeah,
Hmm.
sure, they might be a little slower. Some cases not, but
Exactly.
a lot of them are a little slower, but still being able to live so vibrantly. I just love it. I just think it's a great new role model for all of us that we can get there. But it ties back into really looking at wellness and, your whole everything, all preserving your peace and making sure that you're in the right relationships and focusing on health at whatever stage you're at. Because if you do want to be 90 living in somewhere by yourself, you need to think about all these things. So important.
Yeah, well, even if you want to be 90 and upright,
100%.
you could have a partner and still be, unable to walk to the mailbox, or, need care, or you might be caring for somebody. That obviously is not optimal, but I don't think we can just hope to get there. I do think we have to put in the work.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is there a pattern with the type of people that come and look for coaching from you or look for guidance on whatever it is they're trying to achieve? Do you see any kind of pattern with what people are looking for these days?
I just recently did a survey
Did you?
of yeah, it wasn't a huge survey.
I didn't know that, guys. I wasn't
Of
setting her up.
Oh, yeah, no, no, she did not know that. Of what are the top concerns for you from a health standpoint? And I don't know the exact breakdown yet because I'm still getting answers, but the number one thing was, I don't want to die in a hospital.
I've heard that as well. And I just did an episode with Greg Cantori, and he has a business called Little Deeds, and they focus on helping people with aging in place, home safety and modifications to allow people to age in place. So there's some great resources out there for people that are thinking about that one. What's number two?
Number two was, I don't want to have a stroke and live.
That's a hard one. And knowing people's wishes up front and having the hard conversations well in advance, so important. Janice Goldmintz, I just worked with Janice Goldmintz and did an episode about navigating caregiving and difficult family conversations about aging. And those are the types of things that you need to be talking about in advance with your people, well in advance. What was number three?
Number three was, I don't want to eat cat food. I want to have enough money to enjoy myself and be, okay.
Yeah.
So I think the people now, because most of the people that are my listeners and that I'm coaching are in their 60s, we start to become aware somebody might have just died in your life. Somebody might have just had a heart attack. They might be battling cancer, but because they're 65 or 7 or 8, it's not as easy as if they had been 30, right?
Yeah.
So these things become more top of mind. And so they're wondering, what can I do to have the best chance of that not happening? to me. So
So many things to be thinking about so that we can be in a better position. And then, of course, taking care of our health and our fitness levels, just staying active, building strength, all those things are going to help us in those older years, in those latter years, to be able to do that.
yeah, and I want to mention just one. I'm sort of obsessed lately with balance
Yes.
because balance is super important. It is one of it's a simple test that, I don't know, the Geriatric Society, I don't know who devised it, but it's a test that will prove to you whether you're more likely to have a fall and break something or not. And it's just getting down on the ground without using your hands and then getting back up. It is not easy to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, I'm pretty flexible. And then the other day, it was stand on one foot. Just lift your, if you're standing on your right foot, just lift your left foot just slightly off the ground. How long can you hold it? I can go a long time because I do yoga, but that's, and then if you close your eyes, all bets are off. Cannot hold my foot up no matter what I do. So I'm encouraging people, if you don't know whether you have good balance, check in, see what you can do, and then maybe look into getting to bettering your balance, because of course, falls are horrible for people when they break something as they age. And I was interviewing Dr. Doug Lucas. I love. He's a bone specialist, but also a hormone specialist. And he said something like 64, he used to be an orthopedic surgeon. He said 64% or something like that of women who break a hip will die from that within 2 years. That's a huge statistic.
Huge number. Huge number.
Yeah.
And you're right on the balance. So it's funny because I read, yes, I get AARP magazine, but I read a while, maybe a year ago, about that balancing on one foot and seeing how long you could hold it. And I shared that with folks. And I do think you might be surprised, and one foot's might start out much stronger than the other. And what I didn't try, and I just learned about this, so I started giggling when you said close your eyes. I'm currently going through physical therapy because I tore my hamstring. And she told me just this week, so we do some balancing things. I'm towards the end of it now, but we do some balancing things also at the end of all the PT. And she said, that's getting way too easy for you. Close your eyes. And I was like, why? She said, try it. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Oh my gosh, it's so crazy.
Huge difference. I would have never thought that.
No. And if you're going to try this, listeners at home,
hold on.
Do it nearby a wall, or, don't do it at the top of the staircase. Don't do it if you can fall back on something.
Yeah, you could hurt yourself. But also, what a great, easy way without any gym, any tools, anything that you can work on your own balance.
Exactly.
And it's literally one foot. Just stand on one foot, then stand on the other foot as long as you can. And then, like you said, go to do it with your eyes closed. But it really does. I hear that over and over and over, that it's statistically, it's the falls. And again, that guy, Greg, one of the things he shared with me was falling on a single stair is much more common than falling on a whole staircase or something else. That typically accidents are happening like on your threshold at that single stair point, which we probably wouldn't think about, but you also don't typically have railings, and you're also typically reaching for keys, holding a bag, so it makes total sense. So balance, guys, balance is key. So
here's a cute little way to increase your balance. So I don't know whoever uses an electric toothbrush, but you don't have to have an electric toothbrush, but my electric toothbrush, like every 30 seconds, it says like switch teeth, right? Switch quadrants. So I hold one foot up for the first 30 seconds, then I switch, then I put one towards the back. I mean,
that's great.
So I just do for two different legs, 2 different times. It's fun. It costs me nothing. I'm doing something anyway, so it's not taking up time. And my balance has definitely improved over the years of doing that.
I love that. And also, all the experts would say that you're coupling it with something you do every day, so that habit helps, right?
Go.
Yeah, so that helps.
Yeah.
I'm definitely. I always like to ask this question. It might be one of the ones you don't like to answer, but what's the best piece of advice you ever got?
The best piece of advice you ever got, and you didn't prep me for this one.
Nope, I didn't prep you for any of them, really.
No, you didn't. The best piece of advice I ever got was, when you have a big decision to make, go inside and see what your body is feeling about it. You can go outside and get all kinds of information, but it's the ball stops here, right? I mean, the buck stops here with you. Go inside, feel your body, good nerves, bad nerves, right? You're going to make the right decision for you if you just listen to you over all the other voices.
So for somebody that might not be used to checking in with their body, what does that feel like? What does that look like?
I can't prescribe for everyone what it will feel like. However, I think that we try to talk ourselves out of the simple thing, right? Like, okay, so let's just say I wanted to move. I don't, but let's just say, and that's a huge, and let's just say I wasn't married because, of course, there's that. But I have been in the position where I wanted to move. So the question becomes, why do I want to move? What do I want to feel like? What am I looking for? Because again, I'm looking for a feeling that that other place is likely to give me or not. And then, and the other thing, this is like a dovetail thing. So then I have to say, okay, I'm going to move. If I just feel like crap for the next 3 days and I go over and over and over and over and over, it's probably not the right decision. Then I have to take a step back. But I did when I was taking a speaker's course. Larry Wingett, who was the coach, said, make a decision and make it the right decision. Let it go. Once you've
Yes.
made the decision, you can make it the right decision because you're allowed to change your mind.
Yes.
I could move to Boston. I could move to your town. And I could hate it in 6 months. Well, then I'd move again, right? But it's something about that decision felt good to me at the time. I'm going to go with it.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Something I learned along the way and doing a lot of this work over the last few years is I was wasting a ton of energy on the decision cycle. And it could be little things. I'm not even talking about big major life decisions,
Toast
but just
or English
yes.
muffin.
and then replaying, well, maybe I should have did this, or what about that? Right. And what I now know is make the decision and be done. Just be done, because you waste all that energy. To your point, you can switch most things. You can change your mind and go in a different direction at some point. But we waste a lot of energy sometimes just in that whole cycle of trying to think it through and going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, because a lot of times there isn't a right and a wrong. And I think that's what we're looking for, the right and the wrong. Should I move? Should I stay? A lot of times it's fine either way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's a little bit wisdom with age kind of thing, Marianne. What do you think?
I do. I have to say, for sure. My 20-year-old self would not have had that at all, that perspective at all. So before we go, I want to give you a chance to, I think you alluded to it, but your podcast, Rebellious Wellness, your focus there is to bring all kinds of facets of health and wellness to people in the second half of their life and expose them to that.
Yeah, so it's Rebellious Wellness Lifestyle. I lost the domain Rebellious Wellness years ago when I got mad at being a health coach and I let everything go. It was crazy. It was one of those decisions that I should not have kept. Anyway, Rebellious Wellness Lifestyle. My goal with the podcast and the work that I do is to put something in front of somebody and have them say, I've heard about that, but I didn't know all of those things, and maybe I'll try it. Or, I don't want to even hear about that because I've already got my guru or my vitamins or my whatever. It's to bring people information they might not find Googling, or they might not find listening to mainstream news, reading, mainstream medical stuff. And it's not just medical. It's, as we've been talking, it's about relationships and emotions. And you introduced me about, style. That's a big part of aging. People want you to, like your kids. My girlfriend she has two wonderful children, 30 and 27 girls. And they're forever like, Mom, when are you going to change those sneakers? Mom, we're going out to dinner. Can you not buy? It's just that, right? There are always people that have an opinion about how we should look in our clothes or what kind of clothes as we get older. I don't do fashion for people. Like I'm not on Instagram showing off my jeans. But I just want people to understand how important it is for them to feel good about who they are, regardless of whether it's purple, red paisley, doesn't matter. So it's all of that. And my coaching is who I am. I mean, you've heard me for now, half an hour, 40 minutes. I don't suffer excuses easily. There's always an excuse. I get it. Everybody has something. But that's also the import of the podcast. Is like take something that you hear and try it out or look deeper into it or ask your friends if they, but we have such an overload of information. We hear, and something goes, oh, that's interesting. I'll just keep moving along, right?
Yes.
Your inner wisdom is going to tap you on the shoulder when it's something, I believe, that would help you or could possibly improve your life.
I agree. I think you hit on something there with there's so much information out there. And ideally, one of the things you're doing, and I'd like to do the same, is it's not just curating and bringing that information, but it's also trying to connect the dots for people because there's so much. And sometimes it's overwhelming. Like, what do I listen to and what don't I? And what his opinion versus her opinion or whatever. And I think there's room for all of it, but this goes back to your approach of there isn't a singular way. And I think we all have to take it in and disseminate what it means to us and how it fits into our lives. And I agree with you so much on that front that there isn't a one size fits all for any of it. So important.
Definitely.
Well, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, so much fun.
I will put all your links out there in the show notes so that folks can look you up and definitely take a listen to the podcast, you guys. And yeah, it's been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marian. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.